asking.
There we go.
How is Marianne doing?
It's a struggle. You know, it's just very hard for her to get around. And so, yeah, she hasn't improved much. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
She's still, you know, she's still, you know, she's got a positive attitude. And
Yeah.
so our daughter is coming out in the middle of September from Madison. That'll be good.
Good. Is she the one who is a doctor?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a doctor and two programmer, and the only one we don't have is a lawyer. And sometimes I need them.
That leaves you very vulnerable.
Oh, no, I was going to say a doctor and an accountant. We have an accountant too, a CPA. And all we're missing is a lawyer.
Yeah.
Maybe a grandkid.
Yeah, maybe.
Is Marion willing to have some company sometime?
Yeah, a few people have come back. Carol and Marion came over last week.
Good, okay. Well, I'm going to wait until my foot gets better. I'll call
Okay.
before I come, and we have to take all the precautions we can because of
Oh,
all
I'm sure.
junk
I'm
going
sure.
on. Your caregiver is still very good.
Oh, yeah, no, it's still the same caregiver, and she now has a therapist that's very good.
Oh, okay, good.
And hi, Tom.
Hey, Paul. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
John.
I need water.
All we're looking for is our speaker.
Oh, no.
He's still looking for Donald Trump. This is Donald coming on with us today.
Yeah.
Need some water?
No, I'm fine.
That squash plant is dead.
Yeah.
We need to just pull them out.
Say, Tom, David Boyce really did a nice job last Sunday.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, he goes over a lot, but the information's great.
No, this
It was a
is
little windy. He carried on a little too long.
Yeah.
this is a guy who never met a statistic he didn't love.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
I've had him as a resource person in 3 different classes because the information is so valuable to the students.
Oh,
But
yeah.
we've never stayed on time and never had much time for questions at the end.
I can see why.
But he's a
Well-
delightful man, really great guy.
I have to admit, Paul, that when you said, "Are there any questions?" I was thinking that there wouldn't be.
Boy, it was. But boy, he really laid it on. I talked to Don Nedick after that, and
Yeah.
he knows a lot about these issues, and he was quite impressed.
Yeah, Dave's been a good friend and colleague. He's one of the co-authors of our middle school climate and weather science curriculum. That
Oh
was my last big hatch project before I retired, was to get a middle school curriculum out there and pilot test it.
Oh,
Dave helped me with the content.
yeah. Oh, good gracious. We hope our speaker comes on here shortly. Huh?
We were going to talk about what.
Because I sent him the link, and
Did he respond to it?
I'm
Should we
not sure
call
that
him?
he did. No.
Because he didn't, when we were setting up our planning meeting, he didn't respond either until a day or two later when he realized that.
Yeah, he said he was somewhere else out in, well, they're planning to move to Green Valley, just south of Tucson. And that's where he was, he said.
Oh, okay.
Is he there now? He may have that time difference chat.
Oh, yeah.
Should we give him a call, Paul?
Well, we can, yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
Yeah, the time, are they,
Because, but he was so, shortly after we talked about this, he responded right away, said, I'm very happy to do it at that time, you know.
but yeah, what time is it in, it's only what, 1 o'clock and
Yeah. I'm gonna call him right now.
they don't do daylight savings.
Savings time, yeah.
No, they don't. I lived there for 6 years back in the early 70s. And they didn't. I was when I traveled and so forth, and I did a lot then. It was always a problem.
Are you guys back in Angel Fire?
No, we're here in
Oh, are
Cruces.
you? It's just a different locale from what I'm used to seeing. It's not the living room.
Doing some projects in the kitchen today.
Oh,
Good to see everybody.
Yep.
Well, we could probably fill up an hour with a discussion on John's topic if he doesn't show up.
yeah.
We'll just make it a true round.
Yeah, I'm just surprised because shortly after I sent it out, he responded, I'd be glad to do it. I'm happy to do it. Hello, John?
Yeah, I'm trying to get on right now.
Oh, we're waiting for you.
Yeah, I apologize for me because I was busy looking at the slides and forgot what time it was. I moved my computer and the battery's dead. And so the computer went dead. So anyway, I'll be there in just a moment.
Okay, well, okay, I'll just sign off and you do your best to get on. All right. He said he was looking at his notes and so forth, and he looked at his computer and the battery was dead. And so, so he's said he'll be on shortly. So we'll see.
Okay.
Lisa's on. Hi, Lisa. Are you there or can you unmute?
It's obvious that he's not getting paid for this speech.
No wonder he was always late for his classes.
What's that?
I said, no wonder he was always late in finishing his classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I'm sorry to see him move away. I was going to ask him, why is he moving? You know, anyway.
Well, it's a lower elevation in Tucson than here a little bit, I think.
Oh, it is. And where he's moving to is Green Valley, which is a retirement area just south of Tucson. Huge,
Okay.
huge retirement area.
VJ, did you know Joanne Emmel from the department?
Yeah,
She and her husband Rudy have a place in Green Valley. They go there for the winter.
in
They live
No, Green Valley.
Oh, Green Valley.
Yeah,
Green
it's just a
Valley, yeah.
retirement place just south of Tucson.
Yeah, they love it. They really love it. They spend
it's,
about 6 months there.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a lot of activity there, and it's been there a long time, ever since the late 60s, I think.
Jack Welch is trying to get on for a
Oh,
long
yeah. Hi,
time.
hi, Jack. Yeah, we're waiting for our speaker, Jack.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, well, I thought I'd add to the conversation. I think John and his wife moved because she has children in San Diego and they wanted to cut the 9-hour drive down to 5 hours.
Ah,
Yeah, well, I was just gonna try to ask why, you know.
I'm sure it's not for the politics.
Oh, no, but no, Tucson is a very liberal community, quite frankly. No,
Yeah,
that's not the question.
Pretty
But the
Yeah.
state is not. The state is crazy.
Oh, yeah, well, especially around Phoenix, especially the
Well,
suburbs.
Like I said, the state is crazy.
Yeah. Cyber ninjas, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
but you know, they brought in those false ballots from South Korea to sway the election.
I think the
We're examining
Green
the
Valley folks
papers.
did that. The people, the
We're-
retirees in Green Valley got all those votes in.
We're examining the paper to see if the paper that came from South Korea is different from the paper that came from.
Yeah.
Arizona.
Bamboo paper.
The sad part of that dimension is the departure of all of the people running the elections from the whole process because they're being attacked by
Oh, yeah.
process.
Yeah, well, that recount thing in Maricopa County is just crazy.
Well, one
Now
of
they're gonna
the,
have to buy all new machines.
Yeah, and expect the state to pay for it.
Yeah. That means the people pay for it.
Yeah.
one of the Republicans with integrity won a very close election and he displaced an incumbent Democrat. And he said, why don't they investigate my election? It was the closest one in the entire state.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
interested in that one.
No. It's only cities and suburbs where people vote Democratic.
Yeah, last,
You just need more parties. That's what it is. know?
Yeah,
At least 2 more.
yeah.
Yeah, make
Yeah.
it more interesting.
I think a parliamentary system would be a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the German elections. You know, we're getting closer. Yeah.
Who's considered to be the next prime minister, Annette, in Germany?
Oh, Chancellor?
Chancellor.
Yeah.
Oh, they're constantly discussing, you know, who the heck. But it's going to be close. Because
yeah.
everybody has, seems like everybody is not going to be the ideal person. Yeah.
Well, they've sure had a good run with their current chancellor.
Well, it depends on who you're asking, you know. Yeah, you know.
So it's like that crazy runoff in California or trying to get,
Oh, that
Gavin
is
Newsom
something
out of-
else.
that is
Talk about a
crazy the way they,
crazy system. God, with 20% of the vote you can get or less. I mean, it's just really bad.
it is. I can't believe they didn't get rid of that.
Yeah. What are they waiting for? Well, John, where are you?
You're not coming through, Tom.
And anything important to say.
Oh, you
Where's
always
our-
have important things to say.
So while we're waiting for John, why don't we talk a little bit about where's Dave? Oh, there he is. I'm sorry. Yeah, a little bit about the roundtable. Now next week, you're next Sunday, you're going to have a session with asking about Dave.
Yeah, we're gonna have, next Sunday, we're gonna have a listening session. Would like people to be thinking about the roundtable and any suggestions that you might have about, format, topics, schedule, venue, anything. And we'll just have a facilitated discussion around that as long as it's being a productive one. And then the week after that, we have 3 additional speakers lined up for September. So we're all set. We'll get those in those are going to be announced in the light that comes out on, I guess it'll be Wednesday. So
Yeah.
be sure to take a look at that. So got some good speakers lined up. Well, at least 2 of the 3 are really good speakers.
Because one is you, huh?
Yeah. The other is me. Yeah, you get what you pay for. Remember that.
They're all going to stay on Zoom at 2, correct, Paul?
Yes.
Gonna
For
be
September.
for September.
Yeah, we're going to stay on Zoom in September, but then I talked to Sherry, and here's something we also should discuss, and we need to discuss it next Sunday, but we can talk about it now, is that, and I said we would stay on Zoom until October, but then we could either they're going to have one service, 10 o'clock, and so we could then go into the sacristy and have it there, in October, in person, or we could use a library. And so those are some of the options, and we could do it at say 11:30.
We could do it. I guess we could do it before too, like we didn't we do it in the summer before the service earlier, or is that?
Yeah, well, that gets kind of early.
That's, yeah, that's true, yeah.
Well, and I also think that we should consider continuing doing them as Zooms. So I know that there's some people who would like that. So let's keep all our options open.
Anyway, I'm for in person because I think interaction between people is better than Zoom. That's my own personal feeling.
Can't we do?
I just want to mention something. I had seen my primary care last week for my regular checkup, and she said that they're seeing more flu cases as opposed to COVID cases. And she said two of her patients are in the hospital with flu and COVID together.
Oh.
And
Wow.
I heard from another friend whose grandchild also had flu really bad. So anyway, I got my flu last week when I was at my doctor's. So flu shots are available now.
Oh. So,
And keep wearing a mask.
Yes.
I don't know where John is.
Well, I don't know either, but if you have a roundtable at 11:30, I won't attend because that gets into my lunch. And
Yeah.
well, it's Sundays.
Well, no, that's a valid point, Jen.
Sunday after church is when I take my kids out to eat.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm unlikely to come at 11:30 as well. But
Yeah.
So even if we have it on Zoom, we got to select the time. And we can't have it at 10.
no, I think that 2 o'clock I think for me has been a really good time.
Yeah, this was good.
I also think that we've had great interactions through Zoom, and we've been more respectful of our speakers. We tend to interrupt them. We
Hey,
tend to
there's John.
interrupt them, Les.
Oh, there's John.
Les.
There's John coming.
That's a good point,
I
Dave.
like that.
We let them get their talk in, opposed to 10 minutes into their talk, interrupting them with a question and then having commentaries on questions.
John,
Yeah.
oh, oh.
Okay, John, you can come on now. I've been really looking forward to his talk. I mean, his brief description was pretty direct. So,
You're muted, John.
yeah. John, are you there?
Okay.
There he's coming.
Am I on now?
Yeah.
Yes, but we can't see you.
Your voice
Can't
is
see
on.
you. You don't have
Okay,
your
well-
video on.
The host needs to let me show my screen so I can get the slides.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
think
I
Newt
will-
is our-
I will get you privileges to do that, John. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, you should be co-host now.
Yeah.
Okay, and Knut, I've been trying to contact you by text and email. If you get a chance, give me a call, will you please? This is Jan.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jan, if it's about the auction, we talked about it this morning too. So I'll be there as of right now.
Oh, okay.
So we're
All right.
good.
Okay, Jan, I'll give you a call. Now, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
Oh, well, maybe I should just talk because,
Well, yeah, if you want to show some slides.
yeah, because actually during the November 5th or 6th, whenever it was, 4th, oh, for Christ's sake. Whenever it was, I had both joy and sorrow when I looked at the results of the election. The joy was that our Biden won, and the sadness was that Democrats lost in the House and Senate that should have won. And so I had sort of been wrestling with this dichotomy that I've experienced over the vote. And so I'm trying to understand how it is that Trump could get 74 million votes. He got more in 2020 than he did in 2016. And we'll continue on with that. Heather Cox Richardson was talking about the delusions that exist in the United States and in our society. We portray ourselves in both political and media as some kind of glorious gift to mankind, when in fact we're just human beings. And we engage in brutal, shameful behaviors all the time. Part of the difficulty is that, for me, is that when we see ourselves as glorious, we basically do not learn from our mistakes. We've continued during my lifetime to make huge mistakes. Now, from my view, the greatness of America is in the belief that we, the people, are equal and share our collective faith and determine our collective faith. This is the meaning. Now, the problem, of course, is equal. Equal has two potential meanings. The first is that people are the same, and the other, or have equal opportunities. And the second in the political world is that they have equal outcomes. Equal outcomes are really not possible, although they are important in making decisions about whether we're going in the right direction or not politically. So I found a description from Abraham Lincoln, a beloved Republican who no longer belongs to the Republican Party. And that is that, oh, come on. Okay, that is that governments do for a community what they can't do for themselves individually. And this is because, I mean, the reason that we have this situation is because our lives are made up of systems, and systems behave in ways that people have a hard time fully understanding. And we'll see more of that later as we go through this. What is the purpose? Actually, there's three things that are important in politics. One is that we're going to make group decisions. That is, we're not concerned with individual decisions. We're going to actually, as group, decide what to do about things. And the politics is one mechanism by which we make group decisions and determine what the group needs to do, what we want to do, what we can do, what we should do. And then the last thing that happens in politics is the establishment of social hierarchies.
John, if you're trying to show your screen, you're not doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We aren't seeing your slides.
Okay, well, let me try again.
I think you have to put yourself on first.
Okay. Well.
Does Newt have access to them, and he could, you know, change them for you if he does?
Okay, well, let me try again.
At this point, I do not have the slides.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I have to apologize. This has been a disaster, and my computer has been worn out by the pandemic.
Well, you can just go on speaking, John, if that's better.
Well, Jan couldn't see things. And I'm not sure why I'm no longer getting, well, let me. Okay. Oh, well, I should be at the meeting. Okay, there it is. Start video. Oh, that's what, I think that's what I failed to do.
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Now we see
Yeah.
John. All we got to do is see the slides.
Yeah, well, that's the next thing to do. There's a share screen.
Right. Click on that.
And
Yeah, share screen.
click on that. And now I have to find the slides, and here they are.
There we go.
With some luck, I will start. Oh, okay, so let me just do a brief go through. Okay. One is, I think it's important we recognize that life is messy and often petty and shameful, amongst other things. And our greatness is in we the people,
determining our collective fate as opposed to having someone else determine it, like a dictator, which of course our former guy would prefer being than a president. Okay, well, I should get that out of the way. Okay, so there are three purposes. One is group decisions, determining what needs or wants to be done, and establishing social hierarchies. Okay, now these things are done somewhat independently of each other. We'll get into that later. Of course, one is I think it's important to recognize that there are three groups of people involved in politics: the leaders, followers, and the non-participants. You know, in the last election, there's a when 2/3 of the eligible voters vote, we're in a celebrated mode. In recent times, we've often had around 50% of the population voting in. And basically it has to do with this, well, it's just human beings being confused and choosing not to deal with their confusion. Okay, so anyway, these three groups are going to be people you want to think about if you want to understand Trump's support. Okay, now our political ideology, and I think this is important to consider primarily because as winners in the elections, liberals tend to overestimate what influence they have in the political system. And of course, the Republicans do the same, but they don't seem to worry about it because they can just follow what they're told to do. You know, if a Republican was in the House, the Speaker of the House, he'd tell them all what to do and they'd do it. When a Democrat tries to tell people what to do, half of them tell him to go screw himself, and the other half say that you're too ignorant to do anything. So it reminds me of a famous saying where somebody, a famous comedian whose name escapes me right now, said, "I'm a Democrat, I don't belong to any organized party." Or I don't belong to any organized party, I'm a Democrat. And we still suffer from that. Now, political affiliations, I think, are important, different than ideology, because here in Mexico, if you look, we have more Democrats than we do liberal ideology, which says that some of our people are far more conservative than the victors come to believe or want to believe. And so anyway, that's our situation. Now, the sources of our problems can be looked at in terms of, first, human beings are delusional. That is, we do not experience reality the way reality is. We choose pieces of our experience and focus on them. We're conscious of them. Part of it has to do with the fact, basically an old psychological fact, is that you as an individual can only think of about 7 plus or minus 2 things at the same time. You can only balance between 5 and 9 concepts at the same time, okay? And reality comes at us in a much more intense and varied way than 7 elements of the situation. So if you're thinking about anything, you're going to distort reality in some way or other. Now, Jack, who I dearly miss, once said that people lie, cheat, and steal. I think that's an important thing to state in the political world, because as Democrats, there's a tendency to be naive. And in fact, if you want to, the lie and cheating is a political tool, and stealing is basically the corruption that results from our fantasy worlds that are unreal. And the last thing that bothers me more than anything about our society is that we use people for our own benefit. And we use people in ways that they experience negative results, and we get the benefit of it. Now, I want to get into understanding human beings, and we need to recognize that most properties are normally distributed. Okay, that is, there's a midpoint, and to the left, we have certain properties, and to the right, we have others. And in this case, I'm concerned with the thinking about we and me, because I believe personally that what separates Democrats from Republicans is the focus we bring to situations where we're more concerned with the group and the Republicans are more concerned with the individual. Okay. And notice that if you're normally distributed, you got the same thing on the left as on the right, which would explain why we have such close elections most of the time. I was looking back at history, and there's been only 4 presidents who received about 60% of the vote over the course of our history after the Virginians took or left the presidency. And the Virginians were Thomas Jefferson through James Monroe. Those people were essentially voted by acclamation. They were up in the 80%. But since 1824, nobody except these 4 presidents, Warren Harding, FDR, Richard Nixon, and there's one other I can't remember. But one of the things to recognize is that successful presidencies aren't about how many voters you get, because of the FDR, Lyndon Johnson, of course. Lyndon Johnson has 60% of the vote. And in my own assessment of things, FDR is the only truly successful president in my lifetime. And Johnson's problem is that he was, I'll get into it later. Okay, so anyway, recognize that these properties are normally distributed. Okay, now, in terms of understanding ourselves, we need to understand how our brain works. Our brain basically works in one of 2 ways. System 1, and this is based on work of a somewhat semi-famous psychologist, Daniel Kahneman, who wrote the book Thinking Thinking Slow, Thinking Fast. A recent work that he put together based on ideas he developed with another person. And the key item here is that our brains process information on an emotional scale. That is, we're assessing our physiological reactions to the situation we find ourselves in. It's automatic, powerful, and we don't have to learn it. It's what makes us human. We receive this particular, well, it makes us a mammal, because mammals are the ones with emotional reactions in the world. And you can find people right at birth who are dealing with the world in this way. And the other thing, of course, is it's fundamental to our social settings, which makes us a social animal, which is also an important part of our makeup. We'll see a little more about that. Now, the system of thinking that I spent most of my life in was the rational system two thinking. Paul mentioned that I was a scientist with the federal government, right? Well, oftentimes I have a difficult time explaining what I did. But what I was paid to do was to be a rational person that my boss could turn to and try to understand things that were confusing. And so I did that in a lot of different settings because I was greedy, which I have to acknowledge myself. My life was shaped by greed. Okay, the hard part of, or the important part is it's hard work, okay? And in fact, even a person like myself who spent 35 or 40 years doing rational thinking gets tired of doing it from time to time and let my emotions do the work for me. All right. Now I want to go into the way humans operate, okay? And the nature of humans has three elements in our behavior. There's feelings, thoughts, and actions. The feelings and thoughts go up to build emotions. And the emotions are really what determine our actions. And the feelings are more important than the thoughts, because in fact, when people measure the time at which you're aware of your feelings and then have thoughts is about 40 milliseconds later. And so your body is always preparing to do something before you ever had a chance to think about it. And so basically that's our reality. Feelings are more important than thoughts, and both go into determining actions. And if you skip the thinking, you become kind of an automatic pilot. Now, also to understand our political divides, I think it's important to recognize that personalities seem to be playing a role. And there's at least, now there's thousands of different ways of thinking about personalities. If you can find probably the most popular writings in psychology deal with personalities. And there's something called the Big Five personality factors that developed over the last 40 years. They became a research interest in the psychological world in the 1970s and has come to, in some sense, dominate personality thinking. Even in the present. Now, the two ways I have of thinking about personalities here, the Big Five is about normal personalities, and the DSM-4/5, it's 5 now, is dealing with mental disorders. It's concerned with mental illness. And both of these play a role in political decision-making. Jonathan Haidt and Martin Buber also talk about morality within a political context. We've spent a lot of time on Jonathan Haidt's ideas over the last few years, and not much with Martin Buber, but that's okay. Now, what motivates political action? From my standpoint as an insider, what I saw was status and power, being status, of course, related to power. If you had power, you had more status than if you didn't have power. So, for example, I didn't have power in my work as a scientist. So I had limited status, but more than, say, the average Joe the organizations I worked for, because I worked for the directors. Now, we also focus on either us or I. In other words, we're either concerned with individuals or with or with others. Now, one of the things we have to be careful about in the we or me is that whether we're thinking about ourselves or others is conditional. It depends on the circumstance. And if you want to understand how that influences voting, you need to look at the works of George Lakoff. One of them is right here. Well, I don't know, model or moral politics. And George is a person that the Democrats ought to pay more attention to, but are too smart to worry about him. But we could have a discussion about that. I'm just telling you the Democrats think they're smarter than they are. And the Republicans are only concerned about status and power. And if you worry about status and power, it's easier. Okay, now again, feelings. There's basically 4 feelings that seem to play a great deal of influence in politics. And of course, fear dominates the Trump voter. The Trump voter is basically afraid of things and experiences either anger and disgust when they can't understand what the hell's going on. Democrats are more trusting, but being trusting and naive gets you to be taken advantage of unless you're aware that things aren't quite what you think. Also, now our thoughts have to do with beliefs. Beliefs are important in what we do and how we see things. And of course, the rational model is essentially symbol manipulation using the concepts of Aristotle from some thousands of years ago. And power and control can be thought in terms of 3 categories. This is due to the work of John Kenneth Galbraith, who wrote a book on it about power. And in fact, sticks or punishments, rewards, and persuasion are how you can influence people. You punish them, which is high in the list of Republican tools. You can reward them, which again depends on who you choose to work for. And you can persuade them. Now, persuading is very, very difficult. Okay, people, and in fact, if you want to understand why it's so difficult, you can read some of the work of the Freudian psychotherapists who talk about defenses. Okay, defenses are a way of preventing people from influencing you or dealing with situations that you're confused about. So the defenses that we automatically use keep us from easily being persuaded. And if you try to persuade a Trump voter of anything, you're in deep trouble. They're not persuadable. Okay, now the personalities, the big 5, are made up of these 5 categories. The 2 that play a role in politics are openness and conscientiousness. And neuroticism is about how intensely you experience emotions. I happen to be a very neurotic person because when I get mad, it's pretty intense for me and the people around me. Democrats tend to be open and Republicans tend to be conscientious. Okay, so if you're looking at the differences here, you need to recognize that this, ask yourself what's going on with the person. Okay, now the key for Republicans is that they experience fear more intensely. Some biological research shows that conservatives tend to have larger amygdalas and thus experience fear more often and more intensely. Democrats, open, naive. My God, Democrats think that you can persuade people to vote for you. That's not possible. Okay, you aren't going to persuade anybody who isn't already persuaded. The key in persuasion is to find areas of agreement that you and your other person have, and find a way to bridge, use that agreement to bridge the bigger picture of things. George Lakoff could very much explain to Democrats and do for Democrats what a guy named Luntz did for, I think it's Frank Luntz for Republicans. Frank Luntz, if you haven't been exposed to him, has determined how Republicans talk to the followers and to the people who are going to vote. He gives them words that are emotionally connected and keeps them from actually thinking rationally about any thing that the Democrats think are important. Okay, so anyway, that's the situation in that, Democrats and Republicans. Here are a list of the mental disorders that the DSM-5 covers. The important ones for politics are the personality disorders. Notice these three play a significant role in our former guy, Donald Trump. Narcissistic to the hilt, paranoid, and antisocial. He's out to get as much as he can, however he gets it, and he doesn't give a damn about who gets hurt. Now, again, almost every politician is narcissistic. They have a abundance of narcissism. They think that only they can save the world. You know, Joe Biden has been seeking the presidency since 1988. You have to be pretty damn narcissistic to think over a 40-year period that you would make a terrific president. Right. Now, paranoia is an important it leads to failure. Actually, Trump's paranoia probably is what gave more votes to Biden than any other characteristic. Trump's paranoia led him to do things that people perceive as harming them. Richard Nixon destroyed his presidency through his paranoia. He probably justifiably so. I sort of feel sorry for Richard Nixon. He was the last liberal president that we've had until Joe Biden. Okay, think about that. That includes Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, the Bush family, okay, all of whom are more Republican than liberal, or more conservative than liberal. And the paranoia of Nixon and Trump what's destroyed their presidency. Now, antisocial is really about corruption. If you elect an antisocial person, you're going to have a corrupt presidency. Now, if you remember, I named 4 presidents that had 60% of the votes. And it turns out that the 2 of those 4 that failed were limited by their paranoia. Okay, now there's another separate personality conditions two separate personality conditions, sociopath and authoritarian. The sociopath is a dangerous person who is without conscience. Okay, the authoritarians are people who do what they're told. Okay, they're not the telling people, they're the receiving of instructions. Okay, so if you're looking at followers, if they're authoritarians, they're doing what they're told. Sociopaths are doing things without regard to the effect on other people, except as how it supports what they want. Well, I'm going to move forward on authoritarians, but there's a large segment of the population falls into that category. Okay, I'm not going to spend much time here either because we've looked at it. The key here is that liberty and oppression and fairness and cheating are seen in a different way when you're a Republican than when you're a Democrat. Okay, the definitions are very different, although the words are the same. Okay, Martin Buber is concerned with I, it, and I, thou relationships. I, it allows you to treat other people in ways that discount them and harm them. In fact, every war, the first thing the military does is conceive of an I-it relationship between you and the enemy so you can kill them. And in fact, that's where you get the permission to kill people. If they're only its and they're bothering you, you get rid of it. The I-thou relationships are things that we're striving for in our church. I and thou, equal relationships between people, valuing people in the same way, or in ways that are important, and don't treat them as an object. Here is, I think, a fundamental religious question that Hillel, a Jewish rabbi from 2,000 years ago, presented. And I find this much more useful than the Christian sets of beliefs that come out of the same environment. If I'm not for myself, who is? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? Well, I'll tell you what you are. You're a sociopath. You are a harmful individual if you're only in it for yourself. And in fact, we elected somebody who was exactly only in it for himself and experienced a lot of negative, but amazingly not enough to, well, it shows how many people can support this kind of stuff. And a golden rule, an alternative to the golden rule, when you do unto others, or in such a way that you don't do what is hateful to yourself. So you use yourself as a judge of to how kind you are to your fellow men. Okay, so what do we do in politics? First of all, we choose a leader. And these are called elections. Elections require a different skill set than the second thing, governing, okay? Governing is a different skill set. Elections focus on choice and are spent generating images that people receive of you. Governing requires you to do something and establish policies within the government so the government will accomplish what you want it to do. Okay, followers. These are people who have to live with what the leaders decide in a democracy. Actually, only anarchists are, only in an anarchy can you live with what I mean, you don't have to live with what the leaders decide, and anarchy tends not to be very, I don't know, conducive to pleasure. Okay, now I'm getting into Trump voters. First of all, the wealthy and business leaders tend to support Republicans primarily, well, I don't know primarily, but one of the reasons for these groups of people to do that is the tax breaks. Okay, they're doing it for the money. Okay, another set of Trump voters are opportunists and political chameleons. Okay, I'm at, okay, the real thing that the Trump voter that I saw was interested in was revenge. Now, these categories are not exclusive. So you can be a chameleon and an opportunist and also a wealthy person. In fact, it might help you become wealthy if you are. Okay. But again, political or personal gain motivated this kind of a voter. White supremacists, I think we can, and racists recognize that such a large group was appealed to by Trump. And since Nixon, Republicans have been appealing to racists in what has come to be called the Southern strategy. Okay. Another group of people who voted for Trump are the authoritarians. They like, you know, you wonder why did Trump always emphasize how strong he was? Well, it's because it appeals to these people. You don't want to follow a weak-kneed liberal when you can follow a real dominant authoritarian, a real dominant, forceful person. And so these people are attracted to Republicans. And I was looking at some things that Joe Biden has done lately, and he's trying to create a strong image too, to get, get some inroads in the Republicans' support by authoritarians. One thing that's important in this group is that they tend to engage in cult kind of behaviors, and you see it in, many people have called the Republican Party a cult, and myself believe they're a death cult, but that's probably my emotional or neurotic side. Okay, here is the key item. The leader is going to solve the problems, and only the leader can do that. And if you don't follow him, you're doomed. Okay, and that's Trump's appeal in some large measure. The fundamental Christians, this is an interesting group because Trump is less Christian than I am. And I refuse to call myself a Christian. Even though I have, I would say my upbringing was quite Christian, and I one time believed in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost as God. I've whittled it down to now believing in the Holy Ghost. Okay, well, anyway, they've come to vote for Republicans and Trump also. And now, this is an interesting group because some of them, well, I don't know, some of them voted for Biden and took positions and came out supporting Biden. Max Boot and Jennifer Rubin and others, well, even what is, well, even others have come out for Biden and stopped holding their nose, but not all. And so, again, there are the diehard conservatives who are going to vote for any Republican. Now, this gives, there's something important about that, in that only about 15% of the population is diehard conservative, but that 15% is more than half of the Republican Party. And so you end up with Republican candidates only supported in real ways by 15% of the population, and they can win the election, because it turns out that because of the distribution, the normal distribution of human properties or characteristics, that the choice you face when you go to vote is between a Democrat and a Republican. The third party candidates are just people who can't stand anything. I was one of those once myself. Okay. The weaknesses of democracy, that's important, and I can stop after this. Followers are generally disappointed. Okay, this is why presidents have approval ratings under 50%, even if 60% of the people voted for them, because the leader, well, it has to do with the fact that we're making group decisions and not individual decisions. And so followers who support a president like Joe Biden can generally be disappointed and pissed off at him, and in fact are. Now, the Republicans solved this particular problem by using their the authoritarians amongst them to provide support, even if they're disappointed. Again, people cannot bear very much reality. They prefer fantasy to a truth. Okay, so much of elections are about the fantasies that people have. You can see it in things that politicians promise. All politicians promise to save the world in the way you want it saved. Okay, but in fact, they can't do that because you are only a single individual, and 1 out of 330 million people, or 7 or 8 billion people worldwide. Okay. The last thing is related to understanding. Our society, our culture, our world system have increased in complexity over my lifetime. It used to be rather simple, and for example, business people were Republicans and the working people were Democrats. And you didn't have to worry about much else. You could make choices about the economic features here that help you. Okay, that's not true anymore. In fact, my own belief is about human beings is that we like complicated systems. We get pleasure from them because they surprise us, they stimulate our adrenal glands, they make us mad, they make us happy, but we don't understand them. Understanding requires a lot of effort, which, for example, people like me have done for other people. That was my job. My boss didn't want to understand the things that he asked me to go figure out. He just wanted to know what the hell was, what the situation was that he could use. Okay, he didn't want to understand any of this stuff, but it turns out, of course, as an individual voter, you're expected to understand what you're doing. And in fact, you can't. It's too much work. Okay. Now let's see. Okay, maybe one other thing too. I'll stop with this. You need to belong to organizations if you're going to become powerful. As an individual, you are just one vote. Belonging to the Democratic Party, you can influence half of the voters, like 82 million people voted Democrat. So you could be a part of that 82 million and influence some of the people involved in there. But as an individual, you have no power whatsoever, which is why you have so many people not voting, because so many people feel powerless in a democratic system, actually in any system. And it's easy to feel powerless because, one, you don't understand what's going on, and you're only one of a million. Now, again, one of the things that I wanted to maybe make a statement at the end, I'll stop with the slides. Okay, now, of course, I forgot what I was going to say. The reason Trump defeated Hillary, I'm going to just give you a sense of what the two elections that Trump was involved in. The one with Hillary, he defeated her because Hillary didn't get enough progressives or liberals to vote. And the reason she didn't do that is she picked a weak white person for her vice president. How many of you can actually remember who was the vice presidential candidate for Hillary Clinton? He was my dear friend and fellow Virginian, Tim Kaine. Okay, it's a joke. How much coverage does Tim Kaine get now? He's still a senator, but nobody cares about him except the Virginians. And Hillary picked him for vice president. Hillary needed to pick a person like Cory Booker. If she had picked someone like Cory Booker for vice president, she'd be president. She only lost by 72,000 votes in Wisconsin, and I'll tell you where she could have gotten votes with Cory Booker or any of other people. She could have gotten votes in Milwaukee, Detroit, and Philadelphia, and she'd have won. So her focus on breaking the glass ceiling was a wasted effort because she couldn't pick a real supportive vice presidential candidate to get out the vote. Getting out the vote is the key item here. And you can see that in the normal distribution. You want more people on the left voting than people on the right. And you have the same numbers on the left and right as you have. This is, of course, why the Republicans are focused on voter suppression, for crying out loud. They want only the right people to vote, not the crazy liberals. Okay, now, how did Joe Biden win? Well, he put a black woman on his ticket, for crying out loud. He got all sorts of black people to vote that didn't vote during the last election, even though Trump got more white votes than he did in 2016. Trump, women and white voters increased their support of Trump. And Biden still won because he got more of the left wing to come out and vote. Okay, well, that's it. That's all understanding politics for today. Thank you for your persistence too. I'm very sorry I was.
Oh, no. It was worth the wait there, John. Anyway, John, I have, it's a kind of a negative aspect of our political democratic system that you presented there.
You what?
Negative.
I'm sorry.
executive view.
Yeah, well, this is from the inside. Look, I learned politics by working for the government. And I'm a libertarian because I don't think the government can do all the things we would like it to do.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave. Yeah.
I'll just, the thing that concerns me the most right now is voter suppression, not voter suppression. That's very bad. I mean, I'm definitely against that. But voter nullification, because it seems to me that the
Sure.
have stumbled onto the fact that, you know, that they may never ever be able to gain a majority, no matter what they do. But if they can leverage the support they have at the local level among you know, radical right wingers who are energized and mobilized and come out and vote, then that they can pass laws like the ones that are being passed all over the country that essentially nullifies any vote that that they don't like the outcome of.
Yeah, Dave, I think right now the 2022 election will determine whether we continue on as a democracy or not. What you're talking about as by authoritarian, well, it's an oligarchy. Basically what you're talking about is this political system in which the rich and powerful decide who the leaders are. And that's called oligarchy. And democracy will be dismantled for the foreseeable future, certainly in the rest of my life. And these kinds of political dynamics can last up to 35 years. I think because the people who are benefiting from oligarchy will die off eventually, and there will be an uprising to change the system back to whatever people want. You know, you've seen dictators, oligarchy, and democracy as viable political systems. And the dictators are the easiest because they're the only ones that don't have to worry about what other people think or feel.
Yep. Go ahead. Anyone else have a question or comment? Anyone?
Well, I have a question. Sean, could you operationalize the definition of conscientiousness? So you were saying that the conservatives score high on conscientiousness, and I was just wondering, you know, what exactly that means, because they're certainly not.
Well, I think it means
they're not being very conscientious right now about following the science to deal with no. It
means focusing. I think. I mean, that's my sense of
it.
Okay, and here's what makes a Republican different than a Democrat. The Republican does not care about governing. The only policy that Trump implemented was lower taxes for the rich. Okay, that's what he did. That's all Republicans have been in favor of since Ronald Reagan. The rest is just show. Okay, the only thing they care about is the tax rate on the rich. And that happened in the Ronald Reagan years. And the next thing they care about politically is getting elected. They do not care about policies or agendas or anything. They just want the power, period. And that's because they can prevent Democrats from spending money on group group policies or benefits.
But they also support.
So they are focused conscientiously on getting elected, period. And elections, you know, if you recognize, we no longer have a period in which we consider policies. It's all elections. 4 years, election. Next 4 years, all elections. That's because the Democrats haven't called out the Republicans on this issue of power. Nobody talks about it. It's right. Nobody talks about power. And yet that's all the Republicans care about. And
But
then
they
what
do
they
care
do,
about expenditures for military. They do. They've been increasing the military budget for a long time.
yes, well, this is the one thing the government is good at. The American government is very good at collecting and spending money. Okay, that's, in fact, if you want to pay attention to what they're doing, that's where it's important. Okay, an incredible machine for spending money, and how they spend it determines what kind of outcomes and what kind of society we have. Well, and of course, the efforts, the intellectual efforts are determine what to spend the money on and how to spend it.
Anyone else? We're over time here. We need to, anyone else have a comment? Yeah. Okay, let's give
Thanks,
John.
John. It was worth waiting for, John. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Max, for good thinking. You're moving out. When are you moving out to Green Valley, John?
What?
When are you moving to Green Valley?
Oh, that's a good question. It's getting closer and closer, but I have no specific date. So I'll be hanging around for a while.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Good, good.
Excellent. So do we need any more discussion about next week, David?
No, just show up and be prepared to share your ideas next week.
Okay. Very good. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank
All
you,
right.
John.
All right.
Have a good day, everybody.
Okay. Thanks,
Thanks,
Newt.
Newt.
Thanks.
Yep.